The following video contains spoilers for Masterful. Hi everyone, it's Adam Martyn here, and I hope you're excited for my interview with James Goss, the writer of Masterful, as well as many other things. But just before we get into that interview, I wanted to say please stick around till the end because I have a very special announcement that I think you won't want to miss. But for now, sit back, relax, and let's have a chat with James Goss. Hello there everybody, and welcome to this very special video today where I'm having an interview with the author of a story that celebrates 50 years of The Master. The story is called Masterful and the author is James Goss. James, how are you doing? Thank you for coming on today.
Hello. Are all of your videos very special?
Not all of them. Only
some of them are just mildly special.
I don't, well, apart from the ones where it's just me, maybe I'll be like, hello and welcome back to a very mediocre video today. I rolled out of bed. This is what you're getting. Tough. But yeah. But no, I always think having guests on is special because, you know, the worst thing you can have when you ask any guest to come on is say no. And you said yes. So thank you very much for being here. And
yeah, thank you for being my social support network. Are we now officially in the same bubble?
Yes, technically we'll go with that. But like, not that he watches. Boris, you hear that? Same social bubble. Please don't send the police after us. We need some outside air. So...
I love that I can ring up my parents and go, I'm so sorry, I can't come visit you. It's not because of the quarantine or anything, but I'm in a bubble with somebody else now, so bye. It's a YouTuber I've never met. So anyway, that's how 2021 goes. Bye, Mum and Dad.
I mean, that's a way to start 2021, isn't it? See you in 2022, Mum and Dad. But
yep.
But so Masterful, it came out on the 2nd of Jan, which is the bang on the 50th anniversary date of the Master's first appearance. And
that was 4 days ago, and it feels like weeks.
I know, it just feels like, well, I guess it must be for you because when, in terms of like writing it, when did you write the project? It was obviously some time before.
Summer of 2019.
That far ago. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe late spring, summer. Because there were several drafts.
I bet.
So it was one of those things where I was sort of working on it, and then they went, "Oh, you'll love hearing this in 2021." I'm like, "Oh, that's so far in the future. What will the world be like in 2021?" And the answer is worse than you could possibly imagine.
Yeah, something the Master would probably approve of, to be honest. So...
I don't think the Master would approve of 2021 because it is an apocalypse, but it's the most boring apocalypse imaginable.
They'd probably be like, "What do you mean I can't go out and shrink people? I've got to stay in the walls of my TARDIS or whatever." So no, that's a fair point.
You just imagine just the Master standing outside a supermarket waiting for the light to blink green so they can go in and see if there are any cauliflower left. And you just think, that's not actually going to fit any of them.
For some reason, when you said that, I specifically pictured the Alex McQueen Master, and I don't know why.
I went Eric Roberts in my head.
Oh, okay.
I bet Eric Roberts standing in the queue, lifting his mask up to smoke a cigar, and just being like, "Oh."
But in terms of like writing it, in terms of you doing it, was it an idea you had that you pitched to Big Finish, or did they reach out to you and say,
"Oh God, no"? I would never dream of pitching anything to Big Finish. You completely underestimate my spine, which is so sweet. No, I basically got taken aside at a recording day and told, "We're thinking about doing this. We want to do Suicide Squad for the Master. Here's a shopping list." And I'm like, wow. Is that absolutely the entire shopping list? And they're like, yeah. And then a while later, they're like, "We've had some thoughts." And it just sort of, it started off amazing, and it just became increasingly more impressive as they just went, we've got this, and we think we've got John Sim.
Oh, that must have been exciting, because this was I believe his first Big Finish appearance as the Master.
Yes.
Yeah.
God knows, by the time this comes out, he's probably sort of done 4 box sets or something.
Yeah.
But it's one of the things about David Richardson as a producer, in that he will just, with quiet, diligent integrity, go and get people.
Yeah.
And he will work things out. Like the cross-recording ability that he did with Masterful, because I was like, how do you record this? And it turns out he just looked at it as a really big cake and just cut lots of little slices and just kept on doing little slices of cake until suddenly he and Ken Bentley went, oh, we're done. So it's things like, I think they dangled to Derek Jacobi in order to get John Sim. And then they were like, oh, well, while we're doing that, we can do that. And then whilst we're doing that, we can do that. And, we've got a spare afternoon with Michelle Gomez, so we'll do that. Eric Roberts is in recording for his box set. So while he's in, he can spend some time doing that. There were some special recording days with Jeffrey Beavers and Alex McQueen. It all sort of, when you look back at it, you go, oh, that's actually quite easy. But I'm sure at the time, Dave Richardson just sat there going, this is going to take forever. And I think I got to turn up at a very bizarre recording day where I think I was there for half of a Katie Manning recording day, with John Coleshaw reading in all of the lines, including Missy's. And Scott Hancock had Mark Gatiss in to record some War Master stuff, and there was literally a half hour or an hour on that recording session for Mark to run through all of his scenes, with amazingly an actor called Wilf Scolding playing Missy, which is just one of those things where you just go, oh, that's quite something. So somewhere I have an MP3 of Mark Gatiss flirting with Wilf Scolding, which, sometimes I listen to at night on my own in the dark.
With all the lights off. So...
I mean, Joe, the sound designer, has done such an astonishing job of actually sticking all these disparate people together and giving them chemistry. And a lot of that is obviously down to the actors. But, you really need a sound designer who's able to make people who have never been in the same room together sound as though they're in the same room together, and to conjure chemistry from their performances, because a lot of it's down to Ken, the director, and down to the performance. But the sound design on this, it's the extraordinary fact that you don't notice that Katie Manning and Michelle Gomez never met.
See, that's I knew there were some moments going in, because I thought, knowing how Big Finish does it sometimes where people are not together, I thought, yeah, there are some scenes, but especially the ones with Michelle Gomez and Katie Manning, it sounds, as you say, it sounds like they literally are in a booth together, or in two booths riffing off each other. And the fact you're saying that they weren't is incredible. Like,
I know, and it sounds like they, over the episodes, they build a real rapport. And I was listening to it going, oh, I'd love the two of them to have actual adventures. And then you're thinking, well, wait, no. And I did have this thing where I got the royal summons from David saying, can Katie phone you to discuss the script? Because Katie was worried that Joe comes off as just being too innocent and too naive. And I explained to her that partly she has to. She's the only good character in the entire thing, which is why she has to die. But also the whole point is that even though she's the only good character in the thing, she's also deviously being good and naive in order to manipulate Missy to get what she wants. And so there's, even though Joe Grant is the only good person in the whole thing, even she is behaving like the master, in that she's manipulating those around her to get what she wants. Everyone in the story is wearing a disguise.
Yeah. No, and I like that. I mean, when Joe first gets thrusted in it, as you say, she is really the epitome of that innocent presence of like the Doctor's friend. And then, as you say, as it goes along, she's really having to twist, whether it be arms or consciences, to achieve her goal. But I mean, in terms of having Joe in it, was that part of the wish list, as you say, from the beginning? And if so, was it also because Joe was the very first companion on TV to go against the Master, or was there more to it in terms of picking her out of all the companions that could go in it?
I love, just for a second there in my head, I had the whole idea that Big Finish has like a magic wheel and they just spun it and went
Well, I mean,
Ooh, get Joe Grant.
Yeah,
the little clicky thing is there between,
yeah,
will it be Zoe? But no, I mean, it's down to Matt Fitton, the script editor, and Dave Richardson being very clever people, because they were aware that it was also the 50th anniversary of Joe Grant. And it feels awful saying to Katie Manning, congratulations on playing character for 50 years. And she's like, darling, I'm 28.
Yeah.
But it is also the fact that there is something, you have to in some way acknowledge that era and the Roger Delgado performance. And I loved the idea that, the time scoop turns up and Roger Delgado drops all that charm and just goes, shove. And so Joe Grant finds herself stuck at the Masters 50th anniversary reunion party. It just seemed like a naughty idea.
Yeah.
And the whole idea behind it was that the first episode would just be, because it was written in 6 episodes, even though it's actually only 3 episodes. I found it really helpful for me to structure it as 6 episodes, because I had to balance out the number of scenes and the availability of each actor. And word count. It just made the structuring easier rather than going, oh, it's a really, really big 3-hour pudding. It then became, well, it's 3 1-hour puddings. And I then quietly to myself went, it's 6 half-hour puddings. And so the first half hour is this very, very silly party that sort of gets all the jokes out of the way so that you can then get on and explore the characters. And also that's why the last half hour is a repeat of the first half hour. Because it's like the first time it's comedy, the second time it's tragedy. There you go.
Yeah.
Thought went into this.
I think that's a good way of wrapping it, though, because I was listening to it thinking, I think that there was no way you can have a 3-hour story with all 8 or 9 masters all together all the time. Like, that just probably wouldn't work. But I like how it frames it at the beginning and the end, because that those first few minutes is so, like, when I listen to it, it's so tantalizing to listen to, because as each new voice pops up, you picture it in your mind's eye, and you're like, oh, there's the Jacoby Master, and now here's the John Sim Master, and Jeffrey Beavers, and it's just, it puts a big smile on your face, hearing all these characters that you know from whether it's TV or audio, speaking to each other, riffing on each other, taking the mick out of each other. It's a brilliant setup, and then when they do separate, you really engage with sort of what their own little adventures are in that sense.
And they're different kinds of character, because that was the complicated thing, because it's like what is the relationship between the Alex McQueen Master and the first Master, and you just go, it's the idea that there's a man who goes, oh, I'm a dark and twisted rebel and I'm going to leave Gallifrey and show, he's the teenage Master. Whereas all the others have a black TARDIS, he definitely has black wallpaper in his bedroom and black sheets. And it's like, oh, time, Mum, I'm going to show you.
Yeah. He's the, it's not a phase, Mum, it's just who I am. So.
Yeah. Oh, my God, that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
You just know that the first Master has a really, really complicated girlfriend who is far too good for him.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, Tiffany, you're just so Arcalian. You just don't understand me.
Absolutely. One of the specific journeys I wanted to touch on was with the Jeffrey Beavers Master, who sort of, goes on this story of essentially settling down with someone and just being like, I'm not going to do evil or cause havoc anymore. I'm just going to be with this woman, albeit with a perception filter. And I found that one of the most engaging and also, emotional stories of the whole Masterful journey. What was it like to write that? Basically a master who decided, I'm going to stop and I'm just going to, settle down.
It's kind of the idea behind Missy's plan, in as much as Missy has a plan. She turns up at the party, she takes the party over, and what she does is she sends all the various masters out to sort of learn, can the master actually be good? Because she's aware that the only answer is going to be chaos, and in herself she can't stop the madness in the chaos. And so she effectively gives the Beavers Master the chance to become good. And he does become good, and some of that is how he sees himself, and he stops seeing himself as the hideously deformed creature and starts to see himself as a good man capable of causing good. And he becomes aware that he's with a woman who's also wearing a disguise, and that she seems to be a saintly old lady, but in fact she's accidentally caused all the problems that happen. But the two redeem each other and they reach some peace and calm. Yeah. And he gets his happy ending up until the Eric Roberts Master just turns up and is just like, well, And that's part of the point of it. Just can the Master redeem themselves at any point? And it's the sadness at the end where Missy's just like, she, in the last episode, Missy is basically just empty camp because she's realized that they are whatever of them there is, they are all utterly irredeemable.
Yeah.
And that she just knows that she can't stop, which is, what leads to the end.
Yeah, and as you say, I think there's a great sadness in that in a way, because especially when I guess you think of what Missy is trying to achieve in the TV show, in Series 10, that whole thing of the Capaldi doctor trying to make her see good, and then you take that and put it into this audio, and especially with the Beavers Master, as soon as Eric Roberts turns up, I think I actually said to myself, I went, oh no, because like you just know, of course, that the Master is not good for himself, basically, and it's that sad tragedy of this character who, when he has that one fleeting moment of peace or good or whatever it is, but it's his own self, past, present, future, whatever, that ruins it for him. And I think there's a great tragedy in that.
And and also the idea that he lies about it. So whenever anybody asks him about it afterwards, he's like, oh, I was perfectly happy. And you just think, oh my God, you spent all of eternity behind a barrier with the dead body of the woman that you killed because you loved it. And it's the whole idea that it's sort of like an anti-Star Trek moral in the, the Eric Roberts Master turns up and says, she will love you for who you really are. And it's like, nah.
Yeah.
And it's nice to see the Master being utterly, awfully evil.
And I think you could argue there's even more tragedy in it when, the Eric Roberts Master is heard sort of laughing when you can hear, Kitty screaming at the Beavers Master's appearance. And the Roberts Master, essentially, the same person, just a different body, is just laughing at it. It's his own self he's done that to, but he's reveling in it. And I think, to me at least, that adds an extra level of tragedy to the character of the Master, because it's like, you're relishing in causing a version of yourself pain and suffering. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think that I just thought that's that again, that's really tragic that that's sort of woven into who the Master is.
Yeah, and it's also we've established on the TV show that the Master doesn't care about their own continuity.
Oh yeah, continuity doesn't exist with the Master on TV.
There might be laws of time, but there is nothing that's going to stop the Master from burning one of their previous regenerations. It just happens.
It's that beautiful symmetry in The Doctor Falls, isn't it? When the Sim Master shoots Missy in the back, and they laugh about it because it is so. That is what they are. Like they would shoot each other in the back.
Yeah, and you just that is such a perfect ending for the character. But of course, the Master's character will continue.
Oh, of course.
So there is a lovely sense of how do you get out of that? And the answer is the Master always gets out of it, and the Master always carries on. But also, the Master's plans always, when you poke them, you go, whoa, is that ever going to work?
Yeah. I mean, I think the Master, even more so than the Doctor, is a character where I would argue at least the whole continuity of it matters less in the sense of like the finer details. So how we have now on TV the Sacha Dhawan Master, and at the minute, at least to my knowledge, we don't have or I could be wrong, like an explanation of where he fits in like the Master's timeline. Is he before? Is he out? Where is he? But when he came back, I was like, but you don't need to really. It's the Master, and the Master's back, because that's what, as you say, that's what the Master does.
And what's great is that you can speculate. You can go, is this actually a Master we've seen before who's borrowed the body of O?
Yeah.
To have masterly adventures? Is this a completely new Master? What it doesn't matter at the moment because the TV series hasn't said so definitively. So you can speculate. People like you can do half-hour long. Here are the clues that we have discerned.
Yes.
Things, and people can be like, "Oh, I don't agree with that." Watches again.
What I wanted to ask you as well was because you've written so much Big Finish over the years. You've done everything for. You've done stuff in the main range. You're one of the main writers on the Torchwood series. You've done some Benny Summerfield. You've literally had you've written for what seems like, when you look at your work, nearly every series there is. But being this was such a celebratory release and a celebratory story, how did it compare writing this compared to, say, your other Big Finish work?
Well, I took a lot more time on it because
I bet,
important. But it was actually really easy to write. I think most of the first sixth of it, so episode 1, I wrote on a stag do in Amsterdam.
Oh, very nice.
Because there was that lovely long Eurostar train out there. And there was, a very good-looking ginger man asleep on the seat next to me, and I was like, I am writing all of this camp fun, and there is a hot ginger asleep next to me, hungover. This is brilliant. So that was a very happy 3.5 hours, and then I tidied it up over the rest of the weekend, and then started work on the next. It was sort of like, I tried to have fun writing it. I think the original way of doing it was writing each strand. Because there was maths. All good creativity has to involve a certain amount of boring maths. There wasn't quite a spreadsheet. I think there was a table that Matt Fitton had to sign off, just to make sure that we had the right word count for the amount of time that we had for each of the actors.
Okay.
So that was very important, and so I think each strand had a certain number of allocated scenes, and those scenes had to be a certain length. So once I'd written the first episode, I then went away and wrote each strand, and then stuck all the strands together and went, oh, it's about the right length, I guess. There are a few moments when I was listening to it where I went, well, that scene's gone on a bit long. But mostly it was, a matter of writing the individual strands and then writing the last scene. But I loved the it's sort of like the cliffhanger half the way through the final disc where Chameleon, it turns out, has been evil all along, and just gets oh my dear masters, you have been naive, bang, and blows them all up in a and it was very useful because it allowed me to just go, I've actually run out of word count for several of these masters now, and it's basically all the ones who have given what they need to do to the plot and haven't actually learned lessons. They've caused lessons to be learned, but they haven't learned lessons. They can be safely removed at that point. So it's then sort of Missy gathering together the ones that she wants to learn from to see if any redemption is possible, and she realizes, nah.
Bless her. Bless her hearts. But,
and then you get the fact that the War Master, who's the most efficient and the most cunning of all the masters, is the one who actually puts a stop to it all.
Yeah. That did surprise me, because as that scene's building, you do think, who's going to be the one to sort of put a pin in this balloon that's inflating, if you like. And I must admit, the War Master was not my choice on who that would be, but it worked, Well,
it's because Missy is aware that she is unable to stop it. She's unable to stop herself. She knows that she will fight to carry on, which is why at the end she's just like, we can't stop this, but at the same time, come on, there has to be a way through this. Whereas it is the Jacoby Master, because he's the one who's actually capable of looking at schemes and assessing them. He is the last properly sane master who goes, this has to stop. And there's also something funny about, the Jacoby Master, he is the master who's actually achieved stuff. He is the one who's actually able to go, do you know what? I've turned off universes before I can turn this universe off. But also there's the entire structure of the last act is based around the end of the BBC Shakespeare Hamlet starring Derek Jacobi and the last scene of Blackadder 2. Which, if you've seen both of them, you'll go, oh, right. Because Derek Jacobi's Hamlet has an incredibly protracted poisoned death scene staggering around a BBC studio while Dudley Simpson thrums away on an oboe. And so you have that sort of glorious, you have to give all of these lovely chewy actors long protracted poison death scenes. But also it has to play to the whole idea that, he is the hero, doesn't actually get the last line in the same way that Hamlet doesn't get the last line in Hamlet. And then you cut to Missy playing the Queen, just sitting on her throne, talking to a giant blob, because that's how Blackadder 2 ends. It's I have no justification for that other than it just amused me. Just the whole idea of the master poisoning all of his other selves, having in the first episode said, oh, you couldn't really poison this wine. And it's because the wine in the first episode is a good wine, whereas he keeps pointing out that the wine that he's serving up in the 6th episode is not very good wine at all. So it's the fact that even though the universe is ending, he's not going to waste a good vintage on poison.
And that's almost the Master in a nutshell, isn't it? So
yeah.
Wouldn't waste that good vintage. It's interesting, though, hearing almost, your influences into crafting it, because I think sometimes we, whether it be as writers, creators, we forget how strongly sometimes those influences, whether consciously or unconsciously, can play into what we do, for the better, of course. So, and I mean, Blackadder 2 is fantastic. I implore anyone who's watching to go and watch all of Blackadder, as is that BBC version of Hamlet. Well, all that Shakespeare season. I watched a lot of it when I was younger I think it was I thought, if I watch all this before drama school, this will really help me in auditioning for drama school. And,
turning up at drama school going, I have learned how to claim from the...
How to act.
Camera 3.
Well, thankfully, halfway through watching it, I was telling my drama teacher at A-level, I was like, I'm watching these BBC Shakespeare things. She went, oh, those ones. She was like, yeah, when you go into an audition and do your Shakespeare, she was like, maybe don't take too many cues from that. And I was like, oh, okay.
There are loads of little things, because it's like making sure that the Mark Gatiss master is clearly a master who somebody on Twitter was like, this is a master who shags. And I was like, well, no, he's quite flirty.
That's one term for it.
But he's also clearly read all of his target novelizations several times. He is the master because he's from another universe. He's quite aware that he's actually very meta about all of this. So he's clearly just flirting his way through it and Hogan like, well, I am deigning to turn up for this anniversary special. I'm going to have the most enormous fun. And that was fun, just giving him all of those really, really, it's possibly a slightly too rich script, but you can't write the master flatly. And so having Mark Gatiss just turn up and deliver even richer lines, like when he's flirting with Missy and there's the whole, is all of your costume velvet? Yes. Even my underoos. And it's, it's just the sense that they're having so much fun. And that's important in the same way that we managed to make, if you listen carefully in episode 1, you suddenly realize that it is now canon that In the Night Garden is narrated by the War Master. Because there's a whole chunk where he just quotes and references In the Night Garden, and you just go, I can't believe I got away with that. That's quite cool.
I'll have to re-listen, because it's been a very long time since I watched In the Night Garden, but I'll have to go back. But what you were saying about like the Unbound Master and Missy flirting, again, I love that though, because it sort of teases what we had with John Sim and Missy on TV, but that sort of, obviously the Master is so in love with themselves as well, to some degree. It's like they love and all those like little lines, like, oh, you can reverse my polarity or whatever it was. I loved it. It wasn't that on the nose for me, because I was like, this is what the Master would do. The Master's like, oh, I'm an attractive female now. Ooh, I like this. Ooh. Like, well, that's what I thought anyway. But yeah,
let's find a corner of the universe and read the most horrible things. And you just go, it's fun. And apparently Mark had great fun doing it in the recording. And it is actually, it's a sad story, because it's Missy has a chance for happiness. She actually has a chance to escape this story, and she just goes, nah. And the Unbound Master is basically there going, I can't save the universe. I'm not even sure I can save my universe, but I'm just going to walk away from this mess.
No, absolutely. I would be curious to ask where, I know we said continuity for the Master doesn't matter that much, but just out of curiosity, when you were presented it or when you were developing it, with Missy in particular, were you told or had an idea of where in her life this was? Or was it just sort of write it, without that in mind?
It deliberately has very little reference to specific points. But fans argue to this day, where does Patrick Troughton come from in the Three Doctors and the Two Doctors?
Why does the Doctor have grey hair in the Two Doctors?
Well, there's I think the Sim Master makes some reference to dying. He flees to this planet to try and combine himself with its innate life force. So maybe it happens at the end of The Doctor Falls, but it would be a shame if it did, because that's such a perfect ending.
Yeah, it ties it up so well. So,
you know, to actually say that that's when that happened, and you think, well, you know, maybe it happened after the end of time.
Yeah.
But you know, he clearly has a natural resentment of Missy. But you know, it's not one of those things that you should poke too much. I realize that that's a terrible coward's way out, but it's kind of like when you look at the because I think I'd miss listening to a companion chronicle.
Oh, right.
Because I said to Matt Fitton, so the Geoffrey Beevers master is definitely before the Eric Roberts master, and Matt Fitton was like, oh no, it's before and after, and I was going,
oh boy,
oh, well, that's complicated.
Yeah.
And no, you know, it sort of makes sense as long as you don't, you know, poke it too much.
Yeah.
And, you know, it also references an awful lot of what Big Finish has been able to do with the Master, because you forget that the Geoffrey Beevers Master was only in sort of like an episode and a half of The Keeper of Traken.
Yeah.
You know, you've not got much to go on, and yet for many people, Geoffrey Beevers is almost a definitive master because of the work he's done at Big Finish. And, you know, that Joe Lidster script Master, which in many ways this is a little bit of a homage to, because that was the first story to go, this utterly awful person is redeemable, possibly. Whereas it actually turned out all the people that surrounded him were just as bad as he was. You know, Master is one of those absolute Big Finish greats.
Yeah.
So it felt important in some ways to sort of acknowledge that the achievement of that audio. I hope not ripping it off, because after I'd written The Strand, I thought I'd better re-listen to Master just to make sure I haven't actually stolen that. And it's like, no, you haven't.
Yeah.
Have you? Oh, yeah.
No, I mean, Master, for anyone watching who hasn't listened to it, please do. It's available on Spotify for you to stream. It's as you say, one of the Big Finish. That whole villain trilogy, I think, Master Omega and Davros, is just wonderful. And Geoffrey Beevers, yeah, again, as you say, you forget he was only on TV for an episode and a half, but straight after Masterful, I listened to I Am the Master, The Short Trip, because it was on the limited edition set. And when it, you know, was saying, oh, it's Geoffrey Beevers for 45 minutes, basically just him telling you a story, you know, as you in your head, you go, I don't know how this will work. But then as soon as he starts talking, it says, are you listening? You're like, oh, fuck, like... Yes, I'm listening. And the whole I didn't stop. I didn't do anything else. Sometimes when I listen to audios, I'm, you know, editing or doing this, that, and the other. But that one, I literally just sat there and like just listened, because he's got such a great voice. And as you say, he is the master. There's no question.
Yeah. You know, you do realize that Big Finish just has the most incredible stable of masters.
Yeah.
And you know, also that mad thing where you suddenly think, I've written for who? Because you know it's quite something to go. I've actually written something that stars Michelle Gomez, John Sim, Derek Jacobi, Geoffrey Beevers, Eric Roberts, Milo Parker, Alex Queen. I have forgotten Mark Gates. You literally have a BAFTA awards list there.
Yeah.
And the idea that they came into a studio and yelled their way through some toot that I wrote, you kind of go, oh.
It's something to be proud of, definitely. But when you wrote it, were there any points where you had sort of a stumbling block moment where you were like, oh God, how do I write like out of this one, or how do I get over? Do you know what I mean? Were there any points where you were sort of like, oh, where do I go from here?
Not really. I mean, there were a couple of storylines that had to be rewritten, simply because it's like the War Master and the John Sim Master didn't get to do enough. So, you know, I'd used up my allocated word count, but basically they just didn't do enough. And so Matt Fitton was very much just rewrite that, make more happen. And similarly, the First Master and the McQueen Master, their plot line was originally a lot darker. And sort of traces of it survived, but from an approvals point of view, Matt Fitton went, because what the Master was doing was he was turning all the unwanted colonists into food that everybody else was eating.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And Matt Fitton went, I think from an approvals point of view, this is just too grim.
Yeah.
And actually, because just enough traces of it survive, because they're all talking about cracker. Would you like another cracker? All the crackers taste a lot better recently. You know, there's sort of the sense that this is still going on in some way, but it's just not made as explicit as it could have been. But
that's very Davros in Revelation of the Daleks, isn't it? Turning people into. As soon as you said it, I thought, "Ooh, that sounds like a." But again, I couldn't believe the Master doing that. But by the same token, yeah, maybe a bit, if seen as too grim or whatever. But
yeah, I mean, it's the approvals thing. It's always it's different from Torchwood in that, you know, every now and then you forget that you have to be very, very careful with these ranges because they don't have an adult content warning. So there was a lot of the Masters would all do terrible things to the butlers as they arrived at the party, and that you know, I got a note saying zapping is fine, slowly snapping necks not fine.
Yeah, maybe. No, I guess you forget that because you're right. And well, all the ranges I've seen, they don't have that adult content warning. So yeah, I guess you have to. Is it hard to? Because again, you're one of the main writers for the Torchwood range. Is it hard sometimes, sort of saying, right, I need to switch off like my Torchwood head now in a way in terms of like tone or whatever for a different range, or is it quite easy?
Sometimes you cock up, but you've normally got good script editors, or at the very least, you have a Scott Hancock who goes, "What do you think you're doing?"
You can't do that. Like,
and you know, it's. I remember there was a script for a Lies of Captain Jack thing where Scott pointed out that we'd just. It was like you can hear a gun being fired, but you can't hear the bullet land.
Right.
That's the difference. If it's Torchwood, you can hear a gun being fired and you can have a lovely squishy splash as it hits somebody. But in a non-adult range, there definitely has to be a sense where the gun is fired, but you don't necessarily hear it hit people.
Yeah.
It doesn't apply for ray guns.
Yeah, because they're ray guns. So,
so that's different because I think it's when you're listening to a thing, if it's a gun being fired, we all have an association of what a gun being fired is. It's a real world thing. Whereas if it's a ray gun that goes zap, you're just going to go, oh, that's like a thing from a space thing. Therefore, this is not realistic violence. Yeah, I mean, the work that Joe Kramer has done on this is just so extraordinary. Just actually making it sound believable. Which is quite a thing. And, you know, it's wonderful that you've got people like John Coleshaw there who, you know, there was a trepidation about John can do an Anthony Amy impression, but is it actually going to hold its own against the real thing? And that was the reason for, I think it was Matt Fitton's suggestion to go, well, make it chameleon. Because then there'll be the whole joy where everyone's like, ooh, Anthony Amy sounds a bit Richard Herndl. And then the point is, yeah, oh, well, it's chameleon. He's doing an impression of Anthony Amy. It's a fake. It's actually fine. We just don't have the Amy Master in it so much.
Sure.
And I think it's, you know, there's, excuse me, there is a joy to just not even acknowledging through impersonation the Roger Delgado Master, because it would just feel a bit of a cheat.
Sure, yeah.
I think, especially because he's not been formally recast by Big Finish.
I was going to say he's been the one who, or one of the stars where the original actor sadly isn't with us anymore, that hasn't been touched in a way, has he really, the Delgado Master?
No, I think Coleshaw's done him in a short trip for Time Lord Victorious, and Coleshaw is absolutely brilliant.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm sure you can wax lyrical about the 3 hours of audio book that I haven't yet worked my way through. Because
Terror of the Master. Yeah, that is...
in a bloody room on my phone for
it's so just to sidetrack to anyone who hasn't heard it, Terror of the Master is narrated by John Coleshaw, and again, like, you know, there's the narration, but then since he's doing every performance, every character, you forget it's a narration. Like you've got the Third Doctor, and there's the Brig, and there's, you know, Yates, Benton, and the Master. It made me feel like it was the it was a 7-part master story that season 7 never had.
Hey.
I mean, my love for season 7 is big, you know this, but it's like the whole, like, the plot, you know, the way it's structured, the dynamics of the characters. I was like, this is the 5th story of season 7, if the master had already been established at that point. But no, if anyone's a Third Doctor fan, it's brilliant. But yeah, no, John Colshaw's fantastic. So you need to clear that space, James. You got to get that on your phone.
I will clear the space, get it on my phone, and have a lovely weekend painting $10 and listening to Terror of the Monsters.
Absolutely. No, it's fantastic. And one of the last questions I had for you was, if you were asked by Big Finish, would you personally be up for writing any future multi-master stories? Or for you, is it sort of like, I've done the multi-master thing now, I'm going to put that to bed?
I love money.
Hey, at least you're honest. At least you're honest.
Well, yeah, you know, there are a lot worse ways to make a living than curling up in bed with the cat, writing about various masters being horrible to each other.
I mean, that sounds like a dream job, if you ask me. So
yeah.
No, just I was just curious, just because, you know, sometimes writers say when they've done a particular kind of story or with certain characters, they think, right, I've made my mark with that now, whatever. But no, I mean, if you're down for writing more and they ever ask you, I can't wait for a Masterful 2 or box sets for all of them, because I'll buy them all. Because I mean, Eric Roberts has already got his box set on the way, of course, as you mentioned.
Yeah, I would love to hear a Milo Parker box set. Because you know, it's almost like he's barely sketched in Masterful. You get a really exciting idea about who this creature could be, but you kind of go, oh, I want to know your actual life.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not suggesting that we seriously meet his girlfriend Tiffany. But you know, you just kind of think, God, there's going to be some great fun to the story about how the master grew disillusioned, left Gallifrey, and you know, his first great plan that went a little bit to shit.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of material out there.
No, you're right, because as you say, listening to Masterful, I thought this is a character who clearly is the master, but is still, whereas the other masters are like, yeah, let's do this, or like, let's kill this person, or let's do that. He's the one who's like, actually, you know, do we need to do this? Is there a different, better way, but just like, is this necessary? And as you say, I'd want to explore what are those elements that sort of tips him further on that scale of being like, you know, the rest of them being more deplorable, more evil. So anyone at Big Finish, if you're listening, Milo Parker box set, please. I would also love my Sabalom Glitz box set, but I don't think that's ever going to happen.
This is why you've been growing the hair, isn't it? You're just there going, yeah. I could Glitz, I could Glitz.
I've got my own costume out of shot, you know, so let's go. No, he's one of my favourites. I don't even know why. I watched those stories recently, the ones he's in, and I was like, I don't know why I enjoyed this character so much, but I do, and I want more of it. So
yeah, I just love that moment in The Ultimate Foe where you just hear Anthony Aniav shot going, glitch, glitch, Travelon glitch, and you just go, oh, and then the hurdy-gurdy organ starts up, and you go, this is mental. And you know, nobody's ever paused to go, what the hell was it like for Sabalom Glitz going through that story where 1 minute he's in space with Bonnie Langford, and then the next he's being chased by hands.
Yeah.
You just think this is completely out of his experience.
That can be the first story in the Glitz box set. He sits down in a therapy room being like, so 1 minute I was in space and then there were these hands chasing me. It's like...
Yeah. And it is really weird, because I think there was I think Glitz or Dibber got killed off in one of the BBC books, and there's a moment where the two of them share a last hug and a kiss as they die, and you kind of go, oh, but no.
You're like, nice idea, but no.
No, because you just kind of think, you know, Glitz is Dibber is clearly out of Glitz's league, apart from anything else. But also, you know, the idea that Glitz is so poly that he leaves Dibber for Mel.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, poor man.
I know. And you know, that has to be the last story of your Glitz box set. You know, what married life was like between Glitz and Mel.
Absolutely.
Glitz wakes up the first morning and just discovers that Mel has completely cleaned the spaceship.
You see, Big Finish, we're sowing the seeds here. Early ideas. We've got structure. We've got a concept.
God, poor old Glitz just staring at breakfast going, granola?
Don't get him on the exercise bike with carrot juice, of course. Has to be carrot juice. So
see, that's the other thing. Mel, when she left the exercise bike behind.
Yes, she did.
Yeah,
she did. Oh yeah, and it completely falls apart, doesn't it? With when the tumultuous buffeting happens aboard the TARDIS. So
yeah, well, it falls over, but it isn't ruined. So it's the idea that every now and then the Doctor sort of sees the exercise bike and has one of those quiet little misty flashbacks to Mel.
Just like, yes, there it is, the exercise bike. We need to see it pop up again. One final thing I wanted to chat with you about before we sign off is we've waxed lyrical about Masterful, but is there anything you can tell us about your upcoming Torchwood audio, Absent Friends?
It's got a trailer. It'll have a cover. It's all down to Scott Hancock that it happened. Because it was during my Fruit Loops COVID period when I was a bit tired. And Scott was like, well, it looks as though we've got a spare day with David Tennant. We need a script. And I'm like, God, I am tired. And Scott was like, yeah, well, look, we need a script. So there's a script. And I am looking forward to hearing it. It's sort of
amazing.
A sad little romp. But,
I love all your stories in creating scripts, from being like on holiday on a stag do to just being like ill with COVID and being like, yeah, I'll type up a script,
Yeah, well, if you're only awake for 3 hours a day, you might as well spend 3 hours a day writing Jack, Yanto, and the Doctor.
Absolutely.
But it was a bit of a
feeling a bit fragile.
Apparently, I did reread the script the other day, and I reread half of it because I was looking for some quotes, and it goes along a fair old whack, so it's all right. It doesn't read like it was written by somebody a bit deranged. That was my real fear with River Meets the 10th Doctor, because that was written in a similar fug, and I was like, oh, but genuinely listening to that, going, I have no idea what I wrote. And it's mostly down to Matt Fitton just going, right, I've got a few questions about how the plot works, and I'm like, don't ask me that. I don't know. So yeah, listening to it and going, the 5th Doctor's in this.
Yeah. That must be nice, though, the fact that, you listen back and, as you say, you forgot what you've written, so it is almost just as much of a surprise to you as it is for the audience listening.
Yeah, but then you also get that absolutely shitty thing where you're laughing at your own jokes, but legitimately laughing at your own jokes, because you're like, what?
You're sort of pointing like, that was a good one. So, yeah, okay.
Yeah, you don't get the, you're not doing the whole, oh, well, I was clearly having a good day there. It's like, what the hell is happening?
I wrote this. So it's like...
Yeah, but it happened, and a lot of people liked it, so that was nice. My old BBC boss just sent me a message going, oh, I loved your River and Doctor Who thing. That was great. And I'm like, you listen to these? And she's like, of course I do.
There you go.
Yeah,
friends in high places.
I'm really, really pleased with it, and I think I'm really pleased with the 50th Torchwood. Apart from anything else, we've done 50 of the bloody thing.
No, it's how many? How is that across? When did it start? 2015, 2016, the monthly range?
About October 2015.
Yeah, 5 years.
Well, it's sort of we worked out that I think there's a really weird thing where it came out early, so I think you could get it at convention early, and then it officially released in October. So it's sort of like because Scott and I were both like, oh, when's the 5th anniversary? And we both went, oh, I think that actually happened like last week.
Yeah.
But yeah, we appear to have done 50 of the things. We tried counting to work out how many of the other ones we'd done.
Yeah.
And we couldn't quite agree a number.
Okay.
Somewhere I can hear Tom Spilsbury just kind of twitching and looking up and going, I am needed. That must be counted. But we've done some. And this year is the 15th anniversary of Torchwood, which is quite a thing.
Just insane.
Yeah, I mean that makes me feel old, and that must make you feel old. So welcome to my club.
Thank you very much. It just well, the sad thing with Torchwood is I never watched it initially on first broadcast because I remember it coming out, and obviously, yeah. Well, I remember, I was like, Doctor Who spin-off, I want to watch that, and then my parents looked it up in the listings, and they were like, "No, you can't, you can't watch that. You're 10 years old." Like, but I'm going back through series 1 now. I'm about halfway through, and I'm having a great time. So yeah. Well, it's just a bit of fun.
There's a lot to enjoy about Torchwood, especially as it's aged. Because I think at the time there was this fandom thing. Where I think I'm being a bit cynical here. But I think because established fandom had sort of got this new program and went, oh, it's very popular with everyone. And then Torchwood turned up and they sort of went, I think we're allowed to not like this now, aren't we? So there was a definite sense of people rallying around and going, yes, we don't like Torchwood. And I sat there going, I really like Torchwood.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was, and I think for a long time, received opinion was, well, Children of Earth is very good.
Yeah. I mean, it is very good.
It is very good. It's you look at the achievements of Torchwood as a brand, apart from anything, a series that started on BBC Three, went to BBC Two, BBC One, and then on to BBC America. English shows do not go onto American network television because it was Stars, with a Z.
With a Z.
Excuse me.
Sorry.
Just the idea that a brand travelled that far and ascended so much, it tells you how strong Torchwood was as a format.
And you can almost argue with the audios now, as you say, you've made 50 of them. Like, that might not have been the plan when you started, but it's
we were doing 6.
And you're like, people are buying them, we've got to write more.
And then we sort of did a few more, and we've done a few more, and it's now at that stage where you just kind of go, oh crap, because we still haven't run out of stories and people are still pitching stories, so it's good, but especially at the moment, because we've hit with everything that's happened in the last couple of months, it's sort of got a bit dicey again. Just sort of finding things to feed the beast. Because we were getting ahead and we had all these scripts, and now we're like, we can't leave the house.
So it's like
really difficult. So yeah, I wish 2020 would stop at some point soon.
I know, it seems to have leaked over into what's meant to be 2021, but hopefully that will end soon.
Yeah, I love the fact that once you've finished this, you'll realize you are just a man talking to his computer screen. This conversation hasn't happened, and that's how 2020 you've gone now.
I know, and that's sad. It'll be weird to have an actual conversation with an actual human that isn't my immediate family after all this is over. So,
yeah, I'm gonna go for a walk later and see a friend, and we're gonna go for a walk together, doing the whole, are we still allowed to do this? I think we're still allowed to do this, but I can't remember if we are or not.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Well, at least you'll get to see another human being in the flesh. That's always nice. But yeah. Well, you know what? I can already see in 15 years it's going to be, and we've reached Torchwood monthly range 275, and we're going to wrap it up now. Just like, have you got 200 scripts left in you, James? So...
No. Honestly, I think it's. At some point, it will. At some point, yeah, you want to say at some point we'll reach the end, but then you look at how Big Finish and the main range have carried on for 20 years, and you kind of go, "Whoa!"
Yeah, it's like they've done 275 of those. So,
oh, crap doodles! Really?
Yeah, well, I mean, what a number to finish on. I mean, when they announced that last one, I think it's called The End of the Beginning. And when you see the number and like, yeah, this is the last point, it's like, you've done one of these every month for, as you say, like 22 years. That's...
I still have the first 50 in their cases on the shelf behind me.
Ooh.
And then I think after that, I got a bit more sort of... So I think by about then I was living in Cardiff and London. So I think, I did that awful thing of just sort of putting them in slip cases
Ooh.
I know.
Needs must though, right? So
yeah, because you just kind of think that is going to be a lot of shelves.
Yeah.
I did make a special trip to Argos to buy a shelf to store all of my Big Finish Torchwoods, and I've now had to buy a second shelf for my Big Finish Torchwoods.
And by the time you wrap up the range, you'll have bought a few more, probably.
Well, death might come sooner. That might be nice.
Let's hope not, eh? Let's hope we can keep on ticking. So,
all right.
Yeah,
well, that's an option.
It
but
is.
It has been a privilege to look after it for so long. And
I think you've curated it fantastically, along with all the other writers who've looked after Torchwood these past few years. It's brilliant, and I'm sure many of you watching listen to the Torchwood range as well, and you'll be picking up Absent Friends. And yeah, just on a summary, James, thank you so much for chatting with me today, mainly about Masterful. It's been I've seen so much positivity about it online, and I'm sure a lot of people would have enjoyed listening to you talk about the creative process behind it and what it was like to write. No, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to do the next one of these in a velvet smoking jacket and be like, thank you for asking me about my Irv.
Please, Velvet. Next one, velvet smoking jackets all around. Absolutely.
Mild French accent.
Oh, French accent. I would love that. Pick up my year 7 French. But yeah, absolutely. Well, guys, if you want to listen to Masterful, head over to the Big Finish website. It's available there as the standard edition, and there's the limited edition as well, where you get a bunch of other goodies as well, like Terror of the Master, as we mentioned, the 3.5-hour beast by Trevor Baxendale. And yeah, I know, but it's good. It's so good. Yeah, that's where you can find Masterful. Go and support Big Finish. Every sale really helps them out. So go and do that. Check out James's work. If you search James Goss on Big Finish, a whole list of things will come up. You can see all the work James has done over the years. For all
I've never done this.
I'm sure they have a function where it's like you can search a creative on, or if you type in Google, like say James Goss Big Finish, there'll be a page that's like Big Finish creatives or something like that, basically.
Wow.
I know exactly what you're going to do after we finish this now. So.
No.
Oldest first. So yes. Thank you so much. And to anyone listening, if you enjoyed it, please leave a like on the video and leave your comments down below what you thought of Masterful as well. And subscribe to the channel if you're brand new. And until the next one, we'll see you next time. And that was the interview. Wasn't that fantastic? Thank you so much again to James for coming on and talking with me about Masterful, a truly cracking story. Just before that special announcement, I just wanted to take a moment to say if you enjoyed what you saw and you want to help support me in the channel, you can by heading over to patreon.com/AdamMartyn and donating to us there. Or if you'd rather just do a one-off payment, I recently launched a Ko-fi page where I'm putting up videos on early access there. The minimum price is £2 or pay whatever you want. Again, it's just another way to help support me in the channel during what are definitely uncertain times. But now, that special announcement, well, if you enjoyed my chat with James Goss, you'll be seeing him on the channel again because he actually recorded an interview with me in December for my podcast, AMTV Radio. And that one is 2 hours long, and we talk about all aspects of Doctor Who, all aspects of James's involvement from his early days running the website to producing the animated episodes of The Invasion and everything in between. It's a truly cracking episode. If you wanted to check out the podcast episode with James Goss, you can now, in fact. It's available on Patreon and Ko-fi on early access. It will be available on YouTube eventually, but it's not going to be for some time. I had a schedule with my podcast guests, and I want to keep to that schedule firmly, so it's going to be quite a while before you see it on YouTube. So if you enjoyed what you heard there, head over to Patreon or head over to Ko-fi, and you'll be able to listen. In the meantime, thank you very much for watching this video. Please leave a like on it if you enjoyed, and let me know in the comments down below. Did you enjoy Masterful? Did you get the standard edition, the limited edition? What did you think of it? Please subscribe to the channel if you're brand new, and until the next one, I will see you guys next time.